all our marketing specialists, they're all inside the yard. We don't use any external creative or any external digital teams. And that allows us to build brand equity, consistency, and maintain control.
This is Dan Bova, CEO of one of the fastest growing gym brands in the world. He ignores the fitness industry and treats his gym like a media company instead.
My first year, I paid the rent of the building in merchandise sales. We just want to do some cool things that change the way America sees fitness.
All right, we are here with Dan Bova of the Yard Gym, which is, dare I say, taking over boutique fitness, changing the game. Dan, introduce yourself. You've got, what is it, 80 the Yard gyms in Australia, and now we're like looking at 8 in the US.
Well, yeah, thank you. My name's Dan Bova. I'm the founder and the current CEO of the Yard Gym. But yeah, we've been open since 2020. The Yard Gym started in 2020. We've been franchising since 2022. So the first 2 years was all about kind of building a brand and building a fantastic business model. And we started to expand 2022. We're currently in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, obviously the US, Mexico City.
Oh, wow.
We're about to kind of launch into Asia.
Really?
And some, other exciting markets. So it's all happening for us. But yeah, currently about, I think there's 76 Yard gyms open globally, with over 250 locations sold.
Wow.
Globally. So we're growing at about a 10 to 15% rate month on month, but opening just as quick. So it's always exciting to get another Yard Gym open.
Yeah, I mean, your background, you were one of the first F45 franchisees out in Australia, is that correct?
Yeah, in Sydney in 2012. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How has that experience working with F45 kind of shaped maybe the gap that you saw in the boutique fitness market?
My time with F45 was fantastic. It was a long time ago, 2012.
Yeah.
There was only 20 or 30 locations at that time. I was quite young as well, so I was only 22 when I opened up my first franchise as a franchisee.
Oh, wow.
And I was able to acquire 3 franchises as a franchisee between 2012 and 2019.
Oh, wow.
Had a fantastic time, and I think when I look back on that, I was a coach and I was a franchisee, and I think it's kind of a unique position to be in. Now being on the franchisor end of the table, it's a bit of a unique lens, I think. Most franchisor that I can really see, in our fitness game haven't essentially been a franchisee prior. So it allows me to understand the day-to-day and what it's like to be in the gym, on the floor with your community. And I think that's probably what allowed me to really kind of have a clear lens on how I wanted to develop the Yard as a franchise model. And that was probably the most impactful and valuable time. The lessons I learned were probably the most valuable in that 7 to 8 year period.
Yeah. The format of the Yard is evidence-based, progressive, like functional fitness. So what kind of prompted you to say, okay, I want to create this group fitness, boutique fitness, but do it a little bit differently as far as programming goes?
The position the Yard sits in inside kind of group fitness, it's strength and conditioning based. And I think a lot of the fitness in the group boutique space, in the fitness space, was all HIIT, all high intensity training, 45 minutes, get in, get out, timer based. But I think from a product point of view, we've been able to really dive into the more evidence based programming, strength and conditioning, which is our 2 main focuses. One's, our sessions, one's called RIG, one's called Turf. And they really just focus on, strength and conditioning, I think, but it works on an 8-week strength block. And that 8-week strength block, allows our clients to organically fall into a real training program.
Yeah.
And I work real close with a lot of cardiologists, and we're talking about, the modern day medicines and things like that. But what it really comes back to is what do people want now, and what's the balanced lifestyle? And it really is a strength and conditioning base. And they say, like, you know, that these leading cardiologists will always tell me, you know, increasing VO2 max and increasing your muscle mass is the number one most important thing to fight all these nasty diseases, but also live longer. And that's exactly what rig and turf does. Rig builds your muscle mass, and turf builds your VO2. So having that perfect balance of programming is probably what we've been able to really implement into the everyday athlete, as we like to call our clients. So that's kind of, I think where we're seeing such an impact day to day inside all our little communities that open up, month on month.
I mean, when we're talking about the everyday athlete, I feel like that's such everyone loves to have that identity kind of ascribed to them. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of success come from that. Would you say, was that a very strategic move? Did you kind of take a look at the trends within the fitness industry and say, we're headed there? Or do you think everything converged?
I think it's kind of bringing out that competitiveness and bringing out that inner athlete in anyone is achievable. You know, it looks different from person to person or client to client, but you know, I always say to our network and to all the trainers and my guys closely is, you know, for that 50 minutes or that 60 minutes that a client's inside a TYG and they're inside their session, you know, they should not think about anything else besides what they're doing at that time. And you know, when you think about being an athlete, that's what they're doing. You know, they're not thinking about anything else besides applying their effort, their energy into that movement pattern or into that game or competitive sport what they're playing. And I think if we adopt, you know, that mindset, and that's how I've personally always adopted and focused on my training, is that when I'm in that 50-minute workout, that's all I'm thinking about. And that's what rig and turf allows us to do. It allows us to kind of draw in the client's attention. They apply their energy to where they need to be, and that's why they're seeing great results. But I think, you know, to back that up, our motto is that if you're a part of a TYG and you're part of our network, and it doesn't matter what franchise you're in globally, you know, our aim is to benefit everyone outside the gym as well. And if you can adopt that you know, that mentality and that resilience building attitude that, you know, we train with inside the yard, then, you know, 9 times out of 10 it benefits everyone in their own life as well. And if you can do that, that's what it's all about.
I think that's such a strong pillar that you all have developed with your gym too. Like it feels like there's also an element of community that's naturally baked in beyond a lot of, you know, boutique fitness and what I see they try to build with community. You have, like, there's the coffee bar, there's wellness spaces. How have you kind of intentionally curated community?
You know, I always give the people what they want. I think it's a big thing, and learning and adapting, but being nimble is really important, I feel, in business. And, you know, the yard gym is still the yard gym, but, you know, evolution and evolving and building a brand takes time. And if I look at what we did in 2020 to what we're doing now in 2025, it's the same brand, it's the same format, but it's just a lot more robust. And that's where you're starting to see the wellness tap on, the espresso bars, the evolution of our programming and our equipment. I think when you're continuously building and leaning on your network for advice, or, you know, leaning on our consumers to understand what they're enjoying and what they're not, then you're going to organically just build in a great community, you know, and almost bringing them in on the mission, you know, bring them in on the game plan. And when they feel that level of connection, they just, you know, you've got a life community I think you can bring along for a long time. And I mean, one thing that you guys do really well, and it's clear as soon as you walk into the yard gym, there's a cool factor about the yard that you all have. I mean, your wife, T, who is in this business with you, her background is in design and art. What was that your plan, to kind of have that cool factor right from the beginning? Yeah, I think, like, a lot of the motivation for the yard as a brand doesn't really come from a fitness background. We'd never look at the fitness industry for motivation. Essentially, when it comes to building a brand, I think it comes from the fashion and the interior kind of industry. And there's a great, from day one, the space in Sydney was our first ever space, was always put together with, great pendants and lamps and pots and, polished concrete. And I think that's what the yard does. It allows you to feel like you've already won, even when you just walk in, and that's the nurture sequence. And that's what happens is you walk in, you're greeted like a boutique hotel, you feel like you're already winning, and then you train in the gritty yard, in that industrial grit space with the evidence-based programming. And then you exit through the boutique hotel again, so that little ecosystem is what keeps people coming back,
Which is such a difference, I think, from traditionally what we've seen within group fitness. We've got the super gritty CrossFit spaces that there's kind of a pull towards those. You like to get dirty and get gritty, but then you love the spaces like the Equinoxes as well. And I feel like the yard kind of blends both of those.
Correct. Yeah, that's perfectly said. I think everyone loves to train hard. I think that maybe the last 5 years or so, 5 to 10 years, it wasn't really a gritty strength and conditioning format. But I think everyone's, the consumers are so much more educated now. You go on Instagram, you go on social media, you go on any type of website, and you're going to get a free kind of education piece telling you what works and what doesn't work. So to compete, I think at the moment from a gym product perspective, you've got to have a program and have a product that works, because like I said, everyone is just a lot more educated organically than what they were 5 to 10 years ago, so that's where I think we can get the respect out of our clients and respect out of our users. But again, like you said, they feel like they've just left a day spa,
You guys have mixed in this good intersection of grit and luxury, that I think is
beauty grit.
Yeah, man.
Is how we say it. Yeah,
I love that. That I think is the future of performance. I don't remember who Tatum and I were talking to, but it's fitness is almost becoming the new runway of fashion, and the new streetwear where people are dropping $500, $800 on their fits to go work out.
Yeah.
And it's something that the NFL and the NBA actually has always done. The NFL.
Yeah, when they turn up. Yeah.
They're always wearing the most. They'd wear a Louis V shorts to play basketball, right? And now fitness is kind of getting into that same, not that level, but the level of, hey, you're wearing a luxury streetwear brand to go run 10 miles or to go put in a good training session in it. It's an interesting place because you now become the home for that and those types of individuals. And it's you guys basically predicted the future and then built the future, and now it's the modern day, and it's interesting. It's sick to see as well.
Which, speaking of that, you guys have a apparel line that you sell that is doing numbers for you.
Yeah, exactly that. I think there's certain things along the last couple of years I think had really pivoted to that mindset of luxury fitness and having, these apparel brands as everyday outfits. Our apparel brand sits inside all our yard gyms, and our franchisees are essentially selling out of drops like these. I've got one of these shirts on now, but we do 2 seasonal drops. We do a full campaign, we do big shoots, and the merchandise campaigns and the creative and the assets obviously gets to the clients before the actual product itself. And I was in Texas, in San Antonio, when the actual apparel turned up about 2 months ago, and I'm not kidding. The shirts, the shorts, the training singlets, the hats, they did not even make the merch wall. Wow. They were literally put in the boxes, opening the boxes, and people were just grabbing them and going. I was like, wow, this is just incredible. But my first year inside the yard gym in 2020, I paid the rent of the building in merchandise sales.
Really?
And that was in the first 12 months of our operation.
What a strategy.
And it's just continued to grow. We've built our supply chains now. And
was that planned? Or was it was
I think
you had an oh shit moment, like, oh wow, like there's something here.
You know, Tian having a background in fashion, it was probably just a more, you know, so many things in the start of the yard just organically happened just from our past life, you know, and one is obviously the fashion and the merch line. And at that time, everyone was like buying an AS color in Sydney and just rebranding a stock t-shirt or printing. Where from day one, it's been our own cuts, its own fits based off Tian's background. And we're probably the first gym in Sydney to have a merch line that didn't have a kettlebell on the front of the t-shirt. You know?
Oh man,
And I remember the first day, like I remember the linen tote bags just like running out the door. You know, so you had that kind of side of the business that organically just was there from day one, but then, you know, all my equipment in day one was all branded as well, you know, just naturally off the background of what we had in the 10 years leading up to that. So I think it wasn't like, you know, intentionally we have to get after it. You know, the yard is kind of it's really an organic blend of two worlds. And yeah, that's kind of how it kind of evolved. And then obviously the demand goes up. So we keep growing. Yeah.
And I mean, as you guys are growing, what is, you know, obviously there's revenue, but like what metrics are you looking at to measure like your like member sentiment and community? Like how do you kind of listen to your community as you guys grow?
Yeah, I think utilization is obviously our biggest thing. You know, I've always been a believer that I don't want ghost members inside our network. A lot of brands, they talk about ghost memberships, meaning people sign up but never come in. And I want high utilization numbers. You know, our gyms my model isn't there not to be used. And so utilization, I'm always monitoring, you know, how many times a week are my clients coming in, network wide, what type of results are they getting, you know, and what's our churn, right? You know, we're not, you know, our churn is very, very low. And I guess it talks to the product, talks to the community, but also the evolution. I think I learned pretty quickly when you've got a percentage of the market, you got to keep evolving, you know, and I think with business, it's about keeping yourself accountable and keep pushing the limits and keep growing, but, you know, don't grow for the sake of it. You got to make sure you make the right choice. And that's kind of, I guess, my job. But that's what the most enjoyable part is, and just staying connected to the product. When I'm back in Sydney, I'm in West Hollywood, no matter where I am, whatever yard gym, I'll get in there and train with the 6 a.m. local group, and I'll say, like, you know, how long you been training at the yard gym? They might think I'm some crazy Aussie guy asking them about what they do every week, but I just like to find out how the community is responding, and I think that's probably, if you keep your eyes on that, on those couple of verticals, I think you're in a good space.
And, you know, looking at growth off air, you know, when the camera wasn't running, you mentioned kind of your goal, which is beyond revenue. What would you say the goal is for growth for the yard gym?
We don't have a number set, which we'll talking about. I think it's about, you know, my team. My team have been with me for a long time. My core value team. They've been with me for, some guys have been there with me for 10 years. Obviously Tian's involved, and I've got a couple of very key staff members that have been with me from day one of the yard gym. And we always get together and we say, like, we want to grow and be national and international and do some fantastic things, but we just want to do some cool shit. You know, we just want to like do some fun, cool things that, I guess, change the way America sees fitness, you know, and the way that they integrate themselves with their daily training routines. And I think the opportunity lies there.
Yeah.
If you could define that, what do you mean by how the world sees fitness?
Well, I think it's not a chore. You know, fitness doesn't have to be a chore. And I think once people really start to feel that, once you build some resilience in your training, your day-to-day training, week-to-week training regime, everything in your life becomes a lot better, you know, and people kind of, they kind of look at me sometimes like, what are you talking about? But until you're in that kind of flow, you don't have to train like a professional athlete. You don't have to, you know, train 5 days a week. But if you can commit to, like, you know, 2 to 3 workouts a week in a beautiful yard gym that's that's a community that's supportive, that motivates you to get up in the morning, then everything else in your life becomes just that little bit better. And I think if people can adopt that mindset, then that's where we can change. Sounds a bit corny at times, but you can kind of change someone's life for the better. And then you talk about mental health and longevity and all the things that are happening in the world. Me and Corey, one of my guys, we always say the best way to get to know someone and build a relationship and build a friendship is to do a hard training session together. And I think the world can benefit from that without sounding too kind of corny.
No, that's perfect. I love it. My last question for you, what I was going to ask, is, as you're franchising, we've seen a lot of companies franchise the wrong way.
Yeah.
How do you stay true to the brand that you've built that is so strong with the Yard as you're looking at franchising out?
I mean, to start there, I obviously was part of a franchise network as a franchisee, and I left that network to be, at that time, a boutique one-off location. And I think what I learned very quickly was that when I exited that big unit and that big franchise system, I actually missed it. I missed the community and what that franchise system represented, and that's why I'm so lucky now to have it back essentially and have it growing. But to maintain brand equity, I think that's why our vetting process is so important, and the way that we communicate and vet to our franchisees is probably a little unique. We run a 3-day event. Now they're in LA now that we've got our location open, our flagship location. It's a 3-day event. It's called VIP event. And anyone wanting to buy a franchise must kind of go through the early stages of conversation. Then they come out to LA now. They listen to me
and they
present.
have to be here in person in order to be considered.
Yeah, you've got to be in person. You've got to sit in front of me for 2 hours, listen to me speak about where we started, where we are, but the core values of the gym. And then we have a one-on-one conversation the days prior, after that. So there's and then we kind of make up our mind. Will it work for each other in the right location? And again, one of the crucial things is that you got to do a workout with me. We're going to do a couple of workouts. And like we said just prior, is the best way to know someone is 35 minutes into a rig session and you're still moving and going for it. Are those guys going to go with you and go for it? And like I've always said is, if you get a franchise network singing the same song from day one, then you're halfway there, and I think the ones that went before us, respectfully, probably didn't get everyone singing the same song.
Yeah, and that's so intentional when you're in person with someone, working out with them, having conversations.
Yeah. And, our franchisees, they talk about that VIP experience. They talk about it on the weekly to their clients and then to their trainers, and they run similar type of education pieces. And then all of a sudden that brand message, that vision is consistent.
Do you have that documented, like brand message, vision? Do you have like a packet that you give to your franchisees?
Yeah, I think it's spoken to in everything we do.
Yeah.
Whether we've got a very incredible brand department, incredible creative department. I think they've been actually, one of the best ever. Those two there.
That.
And then you've got our education performance in our product, and they're all continuously singing the same song. And then we've got a really healthy franchise support team that interacts you from the day from the moment you sign a franchise agreement to the moment you open and beyond. They're integrated. They're having 30-minute calls daily with our franchisees. And we get everyone to open and on the right track for success. But again, if you just little messages, little bits of information, but it's all consistent throughout. And that's what's probably most exciting to see,
that's got to be cool to see that growth.
Yeah.
One thing that I think you guys do extremely well in comparison to other facilities is something that I've been talking about a lot more lately, about like thinking in sets, meaning the recovery area is a set. That's a set where you can build a content pillar and then you can repeat a series, you could repeat some kind of format. there. Then your recovery, the turf area, the warm-up area, like those could all be different kinds of sets, like almost very similar to a movie set, that you can repeat ideas or have an idea and then alter who's in the idea, how the idea is executed, etc. Walk me through your content strategy and the creative team, and how you guys look at executing your content as a whole, for people that honestly don't understand or don't know how to like really come up with ideas. I think most people struggle with putting together very good ideas or idea generation as a whole, and I feel like you guys do not struggle with that.
No, it's almost like we have to try and
pull it back.
We've got to try and think, okay, what aren't we going to show this month? I think like starting out is different to where we are today. Like obviously where we are today is a whole different kettle of fish. But yeah, I think having a plan is really important. You can't, if you're starting out, trying to build a creative strategy, you've got to have an element of kind of ad hoc creative, but your core foundation has to be consistent. And consistency for us in franchising is everything. So having a plan, and that starts from a 12-month plan, and it gets granular to like daily plans, and it just piles its way down into like a daily kind of output, and minimum criteria. So, we have a minimum criteria that our franchisees and us at HQ must hit every single day. So they know that they must hit 2-3 posts of X, 2-3 posts of Y. And that consistency will then allow the integration and kind of the interaction with the community on a daily basis, because they go to it, because everyone loves routine, right? So you've got to build, the yard is in people's routine. When they open up their phone, they look at the yard gym, they look at the story content, because that's part of their routine. That also motivates them to get into our space and train. That's part of their routine. They exit the boutique hotel, and then again, that PM, they're looking at the yard gym. So we're kind of talking to our clients throughout, but from a creative perspective, it's all about, for us, I think, it's all about consistency, having a plan. And when you do that, that allows you to kind of act responsibly to that ad hoc creative, which is, the spark or the cherry on the top.
One thing you just mentioned is something we work with a lot of kind of fitness and health and performance brands, and I'm always talking to them about like expectation setting. Like the only way you can form a habit with any kind of consumer is if you create an expectation and then you consistently meet that expectation. You know what I mean? Very similar to what you're saying. If it's a story every single day, or it has to be posting XYZ twice a week and this XYZ twice a week, you build up that expectation that, hey, I'm getting this information from the yard, or this entertainment from the yard. And without that, you don't form a consumption habit around your brand. Versus what you're mentioning is like most gyms and most facilities in general, they're posting the same type of content, right? They're posting just testimonials, UGC, things that are just trying to get people to become members, versus changing it. And like you guys, which I'll get into, like you guys treat the yard like a media company, right? You have a podcast, you have a YouTube channel, you have all the different pages, and then obviously the core page. You guys are treating more like a media channel where these consumers actually expect something from you, and you're repeating it day over day, which is going to cause a much higher engagement rate than the brand that's just like new treadmills. You know what I mean?
Or like,
class starts at,
I lost 2 pounds, or like I think what I can reference there is like, I've got whether it's creative brands, education, performance, network health, digital, every vertical inside my company, they adhere to a brand promise. And one of those brand promises is consistency. And that brand promise our franchisees rely on those brand promises. That goes down to their trainers, and then obviously goes down to their clients. And that's where the consistency and the buy-in is so strong. But you're right, I think, building that out. And it's funny, I look at I walk up into the office in Sydney, because that's where our central office is still. And then obviously our satellite, or our second tiered office is in LA now. But I walk into the office in Sydney and I look down from, when you walk upstairs, you've got everyone kind of spaced out. And I look and I'm like, it's all brand and creative. All my guys are creatives. and it's such a fun environment. Like if you could put a GoPro in the corner of that, it would just be hilarious. But they're all creatives, and it doesn't matter what vertical they're in. They're all, you know, got that sense of creative element to them, and I think that's what you can see the byproduct in that.
And the segues perfectly, because again, something that I thought was super interesting about you guys, and it differentiates you. And you know, you and I actually talked that, like, I was the CMO, the collective for roughly 2 years, and my biggest thing that I would preach to them is like, hey, if we want to get ahead of this wave that's happening, we need to become a media company. You know, we need to have, collective needs to have a podcast. We need to have our YouTube channels. We need to have our content series and shows, et cetera, that we're doing on a daily basis. How do you guys look at that? Because you guys have what seems like a very robust creative team. You guys do have the podcast, you have the YouTube series, you have the content series. How do you think about your media ecosystem as a whole and its importance in like lifting the brand's perception and overall affinity?
Well, I always look back and I think one of the most pivotal things I did early on is I bought all of digital. Obviously creative brand was already, brand and creative were already there from day one, but I bought my digital team in-house. And that really, I think, has changed where we are today. So I'm talking from everything. So digital supports podcast, supports, all our creative team. It supports our nurture sequence. It supports everything that the business does. But I bought it internally. So all your Facebook ads, all our marketing specialists, they're all inside the yard. We don't use any external creative or any external digital teams. Oh. And that allows us to build brand equity, consistency, and maintain control. So all our franchisees, they're working with HQ on their meta ads, for the Instagram ads. And that allows our creative team to talk to our digital team. And then they funnel that back to our education performance, which all this information funnels back to our network health team. So then they collect all that data and then work with our franchisees. So, that's kind of where we see the biggest lift in our ecosystem, I think. And that's how I view our creative and our marketing, is that it's more than just, you could have the best marketing team ever, but if you don't have the verticals to support that marketing team, then they're kind of, what are they marketing?
Yeah.
Right. So you've got to have the infrastructure to fulfill that game plan. And I think one of the most, like I said, the pivotal thing I ever did was bring digital internal, and it just feeds that creative and marketing plan.
You're the first person that I talk to that talks about those teams not operating in silos at all. And because this is something I talk about on my podcast, like religiously, where I talk about media and more so organic content should be like the core and the nucleus of all decision making. Because if I put out a piece of content tomorrow, I can get data points within an hour or two that says, hey, paid team, there's something here, like we should spin this into paid ads, we should spin this into an email, we should change our nurture campaign based off like this content series. Like there's so much data that you can pull from your podcast, from your YouTube, from your organic social that never gets communicated across, like from team to team.
Yeah.
And that is such a problem. It's so much wasted time, energy and money. Like, because email's doing their own thing and they think they got it on lockdown, and they're not even considering what's happening on social. And like social's like, yo, we've just had these 3 things absolutely pop off, but they're not communicating. And like having that environment where everybody works together, and it's also not competitive, probably, where, again, I've been on growth teams earlier in my career where it was like social had to do better than this channel, had to do better than email. And it wasn't this space of, yo, what data points do you have? Because again, another example is like, if email makes let's just go with a generic email idea, but like a 5 reasons why type of email, and it has a very high click-through rate, on the creative team, I should then make like an organic piece of content about that, or very similar format.
Yeah, I can say they are very competitive. Those teams are so that, but that's what it's all about, that competitive mindset. But I think how you harness that competitiveness, team leaders versus, not versus, but team leader against team leader. But you're right. I mean, it's not uncommon that an EDM will go out, they'll get a high click-through rate on a specific photo, or the digital team are like, hey, creative, like, you know, our VIP ads or our network ads have gone live and the still is working better. And they'll double down on the stills and what type of still is working better in that market. So like all the campaigns can be running and they're swapping out creative like on the spot.
Dude, that's so awesome.
You know, so they're learning. And I've always said, like, the ability we have is we can learn a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Because these external agencies, you know, they might spend an hour with you on, you know, something every Monday and you get a report and you got to make sense of it. But yeah, it's not uncommon to see our digital team giving some creative feedback and the creative is saying, well, I can give you that creative, but it might not fit perfectly in the phone or website versus phone and, you know, that type of thing. So versus EDM or whatever it looks like. But yeah, they're learning a lot quicker and ultimately, you know, we're servicing their network, you know, 10 times better.
Especially because, I mean, in our day and age, like speed and volume is if you could unlock speed and volume, you could beat just about anybody. You know what I mean? And that only happens if you can integrate very fast and like communicate data points very, very fast.
Yeah. I mean, for us, very similar. We say speed the first dollar. And that requires speed on digital, speed on creative, speed on education. But it even goes all the way down to our construction team that are you know, we've got internal architects and architectural teams that work on the fit outs. You know, they're learning at the speed of what the digital are doing and what creative are doing, you know, because they want to be across what they're kind of putting out to our network so they can make sure our spaces are aligning and things like that. So, yeah, it's just a fun space to be in.
It is, man.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought was interesting that you said prior and earlier in the conversation was, you know, you didn't reference looking at other facilities for inspiration. You were looking at fashion. You were looking at XYZ. Where do you pull a lot of your inspirational references from currently or have in the past? Because there's a few things I think about there. First of them being, I think more brands should be looking at fashion and how fashion executes. If you want to be a leader within your category, I think in your outside of fashion, you need to be looking at fashion as a whole.
Yep.
Specifically streetwear and high-end fashion, because they execute at like they're always setting the trend, and then people are typically like 6 to 12 months behind, and then fashion's on to the next thing.
Yep.
Where are you pulling a lot of your inspiration from that helps you make creative decisions, interior design decisions, etc.?
I generally, in my mind, break it down into two major things. For inspiration on something, obviously fashion from the way it presents. Hospitality, and then hospitality because of the way it makes you feel. And I think, you know, like brand presents well. Hotels, boutique hotels, the way the way it looks, you know, from an external position. But how does hospitality make you feel when you walk into a boutique coffee shop and you have a boutique, you know, nice cup of coffee? In Australia, the coffee scene's out of control, especially on the East Coast there. But how does that make you feel? And that's what I've always wanted my fitness facilities to do, is how does someone feel when they're training and how do they feel when they leave? They should feel like the Hulk. They should feel like they're going to take on the world. And as a trainer, I think that's what I probably organically did, you know, for all those years. So for inspiration, probably, look, fashion, hospitality is obviously the two major things, because they do impact feeling straight away. And then being in the fitness game, you've got the ability to actually give someone a physical uplift, you know.
Do you have any like method to your madness on how you collect inspo, save inspo? Like, are you like, hey, on Saturdays and Sundays, I don't talk to anyone because I'm pulling references? Like, what's your madness?
Yeah, not really. I think it's probably just a consistent energy. You know, it's not like I would never time block a couple of hours on a Saturday to go build a mood board or anything like that. It's more just integrating yourself with those spaces that you want to be a part of. And just kind of referencing anything that I think stands out. But it's my whole team that are doing it too, right? It's not just me. I'll be, you know, my phone is consistently just, you know, going off with, can we do this? Can we do that? Screenshot this, screenshot that. Like, can we, what, you know? And I've sometimes got to be like, no, we can't do that, right? And they're like, what? They're like, you know, so yeah, like it's a team effort, you know. My team, I can't say a bad word about them. They're solid. Yeah.
That's awesome to hear too. How big is the team? Like, if I know you obviously have every franchise has a team, but like your core team, the team that you roll deep with, how big is that team?
It's getting pretty big. It's I mean, it's actually to some people it's not that big, but for us it's probably sitting around 40. Wow. Internally at the moment, 40 day to day, and then they're kind of split between obviously Sydney and LA, but then we've got a lot of external people that we kind of rely on. You know, we've got internal legal teams, but then legal teams in every country, accounting teams in every country. So I think our whole kind of ecosystem probably sits at around, you know, maybe 80, but our day-to-day yard crew is probably sits around 40 now.
How much of that is like creative and media?
I think they've all got elements of creative, but probably I think it's about 60-40.
60% creative?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think how you apply that creative to every kind of department is crucial. But yeah, like they are all got a sense of creativeness to them. Even like the accountants, like, you know, the lawyers, they're all creative. Like, I think once you get
That's a sentence I haven't heard.
Yeah, like, if you come from like true blue collar corporate, you're not really getting creative lawyers, but they've all got that sense of fun. And you know, the best thing about them, they all love the brand, but they love the product.
That's awesome.
But you turn up to HQ, because our HQ office sits with the original Yard Gym. You turn up to HQ on a Monday morning at 5 a.m. The whole of the HQ staff are in their training.
Wow. From
the lawyers, the accountants, the digital team, they're all the creative team, they're in their training. And they're not just in their training, they're like getting after it, you know, setting the standards. So, I think it does play dividends, you know, through their work.
And that's so key, man. I feel like that level or that level of culture breeds creativity, and it breeds this hunger to expand your creative limit every single time. That is so hard to find, especially in our landscape. Like it's very easy to find people who get comfortable versus like trying to expand their level of creativity and their limit of creativity. Like I listened to something from Kobe where he talked about if I hire you and then, you know, I give you a project and you're like, oh yeah, I can do that. That's not the right project for you. You should be taking on the project that you're like, I don't know if I can do that, but I will try to do that. You know what I mean? And from what it sounds like you've built that kind of culture in your creative team. Yeah,
I think so. And I think what helps is they're so engaged with the product and the community that they might be halfway through a rig session and do something, and that will trigger them to go, oh, if I'm doing it on this end of the table and it comes down into the client's hands like this, why don't I do it 10% different, and they'll get a better outcome, you know, because if you can get that engagement, you know, you're on to a winner.
100%.
So, yeah.
Well, brother, I appreciate you jumping into the car with us with two strangers you don't know to drive you around LA in these wild streets.
LA traffic.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate you doing this. Good luck on everything. We're huge fans of what you do, how you do it. So, man, I appreciate it. Where can they find you, support you, and connect with you?
Yeah, I think the easiest one is obviously social media, Instagram, the Yard Gym, and off those pages you'll find everyone else's pages. But yeah, the Yard Gym HQ, that's our main page, and yeah, directly there you'll find all the personalities and the people that make up the Yard Gym. And yeah, I appreciate you guys coming and doing this. And yeah,
of course, man, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
near you.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hell yeah.